How do you get the clarity and the high end in your mixes?
Well, thank you. Um, there's, I don't know. I mean, the very quick answer is I hear it and I counteract what's wrong, right? A little bit more complicated and maybe a little bit of a feedback that I see also, and I'm confused by it. Next to the saturation, I'm a little kind of concerned about the whole saturation part, right? As you can tell. But the other thing that I see online, and I'm so confused. And by the way, when I say these things, I don't mean people do it wrong. I'm literally like, why would they do that? So anyway, what I see is people using high cuts on like vocals, like at like 16 kilohertz and stuff, and I'm like, why? Like, I would never do that. Like, I think I think I could almost say, for the last 1,000 mixes, I have never used a high cut on anything ever. You know, the only reason I would use one is like if there's very clearly a hiss at the top, but there's no musical information anymore. So it's maybe easier to high cut it than using a noise reduction plugin. Plus, sometimes you don't get the noise print because there's not enough space between the actual usable stuff and the hiss. So I might fix that with that. Okay, but otherwise, I'm like, I've seen vocal chains, like there's a high cut on the vocals, and I don't get it. The whole point is to, like you said, have an open mix. We want to counteract aliasing frequencies, etc. Like we're trying to get actually as much high frequencies into our converters as we can, right? And somehow some people decide to put low cuts on the top, and I'm like, but why would you do that? Now there's one way that it used to be a way where that made sense, where you can bend a high shelf with a low cut. Like for instance, you push 10 kilohertz with a high shelf, and then you go like, but at the very end, very top, it gets a little bit too bright. So now you low cut it, so you get like this curve. That makes sense. Totally fair. Get it. But with digital technology, we can basically make any freaking shape we want up there, so we don't need to do that trick anymore. So it's confusing to me. It's confusing when I see high cuts. I'm like, this is weird. This is the opposite. So similar to my bass thing, what I said earlier, it's almost like the more you leave the open, the high end untouched, the more right it will be, because that's what the instrument did. So now, two things. One thing, I do low cut a lot. And the reason is, like I mentioned earlier, I want to move crud and instruments out of the way of the bass and kick drum, but only below what is musically necessary. Of course, so for instance, and this is why one wants to be maybe a musician or learn about music theory, the lowest end of a guitar is 82 hertz, right? The E, unless it's tuned down to an E flat, whatever. See, there's your music theory for you. But so theoretically, there is no musical information under 82 hertz on a guitar, which is great because the bass, the low end is at 41 hertz. And so you have 40 hertz of space to have theoretically nothing going into your bass frequencies. So, but that takes work because there is amp noises. There's some, down there's not that much hum, so 60 hertz could be there. But there's cruds and there's little pops and there's footsteps. I get it. All of this stuff has to be cut out with low cut. So to me, I actually do think low cutting everything underneath is great, but I don't do it on the master, by the way. I do it on the individual channel because I can exactly decide where it has to be. I don't believe in like having to cut out low energies on the master on default. From time to time that helps. Okay, anyway, but I wanted to say, like, so I do low cut, I just don't do high cuts. The other thing is, imagine two black speakers like these two. When they don't play music and you close your eyes, it's like, it's actually not a white canvas, it's a black canvas because you don't see anything, right? To me, when you start playing music, that black canvas now gets filled with frequencies. And how bright or dark a record is has something to do with the actual arrangement first and with the mixing second. If there's no bright instrument, the record will never be bright. And also, in a way, that black space that you now have in your head gets filled by high frequencies. Like put a triangle in there, all of a sudden there's a white sound up there at 12 kilohertz or something like that. So now imagine you have 20 instruments all having a little bit of high end, but most don't have 16 kilohertz in there. Most, I mean, vocals do often, but like guitars end at like 5, 6, 7 kilohertz. Everything above that is noise or amp noise. Theoretically, a lot of instruments have like a harmonic overtone row that goes all the way up, but they do go down a level quite a bit. So basically, what I was just trying to protect in the low end with my low cuts, cutting everything out that shouldn't be there, I don't feel it is anywhere close to the level and prominence in the high cut. In the high end. So I'm not protecting anything by cutting off the very top of a record. So that being said, I listen to it. I do only EQ moves that are musically interesting. The brightest thing in the record is probably the vocal, and I don't high cut. Those are the things that I think create the appropriate brightness in a record. And I'm not saying that every record I'm doing is particularly bright, but I can definitely say I hate it when stuff sounds muddy and dark, but you feel it out. And actually, when you talk with clients, I joked about this to a friend of mine recently, it seems like the hardest thing to do is to get exactly right what the client wants from a vocal, EQ-wise. And that's totally fine because, again, it's creativity. But let's say I do a first mix and I EQ'd some beautiful high end into the vocal and it's reasonably lean and clean at the bottom, like 200, 300 hertz. So it's not muddy or anything like that. Whatever I come up with, like it might sound like the most awesome vocal ever mixed, hopefully. Not always, but whatever. Do you know what I mean? It depends on the client. The client can say back, oh, I love this, is the best thing ever. Or they could say, now it's too lean, or it's still too thick. Like it's just their thing. And then at the end, I have to add some low mids or take down the high end. And it's not that they're wrong. It's just they hear vocals a little different. And it also makes me not wrong. And I'm also not sad about, okay, now I have to turn down the high end by like, let's say 3 dB, which is a lot. Right? It's just a different look at the place. So there's no right place. There's only right place for the genre, right place for the song at hand, and right place for the client where they hear music. And the answer is we have to get there and then provide what they want. That's what winning is there.
To watch the full video, click the link below and don't forget to subscribe.